Now, most of the time we turn the magzometer on, we light its jets and focus on good or bad advertising. This week, though, we're going to point it in a different direction as we look at a new book, History of Brands and Branding, by that well-known custodian of all things brand in the country, Ken Preston. It really is an intense labour of love, and Preston takes us back initially to 1685 and arguably South Africa's first brand, Groot Constantia, the wine label. Bet you didn't know that it was mentioned in one of Jane Austen's novels. Answers in an email, please. Preston says this was the start of distinct non-European based homegrown brands, and it well continues today. And then the book's journey begins. He looks with great affection at brands like Mrs. Bull's chutney, a taste that survives, to brands like I&J that has been in the nation's freezers for 100 years, would you believe. Let's skip to the 1940s, where SAA, South African Airways, was telling us that its service to Europe was the shortest and fastest via the west coast of Africa. And of course, iconic brands like Castle Lager, where in 1927 consumers were told it was a delicious lager, and man was it good. Preston has done a remarkable job in compiling this brand history, which of course also becomes a useful de facto history of the country. It really is a must-read for anyone in the commercial communications industry, and I'd suggest a long, enjoyable, languid read for anyone who isn't. So how do we rate it? No argument. We're going to say a big oh boy. Now, the great mystery in selling brands is how we react as consumers when faced with product on shelf. Are we influenced by advertising, or is it much more than that? It really is the holy grail that marketers have been looking for years, and will continue to do so. Dan Ariely is an Israeli-American professor of psychology and behavioral economics. He teaches at Duke University and is the founder of the Center for Advanced Hindsight, and was a highlight guest at the recent Discovery Invest Leadership Summit here in Johannesburg. He sat down with us and I asked him first about the role that intuition plays in the big purchase equation.
So the basic idea is that we feel that we're the driver, that we're kind of deciding on our own preferences, that we choose where to eat and what to wear and what to do, and everything is kind of outcome of our preferences. It turns out that that's really not the case. The last 50 years of research in psychology and economics have basically shown that our decisions are much more an outcome of the environment in which we're placed than our own preferences. And of course, one extreme example is emotion. So if I put you under any sort of emotional state, there's a good chance that you will make a different decision. Right now, you might say, I will never text and drive, I'll always be safe. You listen to music, the window is down, the wind is blowing in your hair, all of a sudden there's a very different feeling about what we're going to take. So we feel that we make decisions. The reality is we don't. So now, what do you do if you understand that what's driving our decision is not what we feel is driving the decision? It basically means that you need to doubt what you think is driving your decision. And by the way, it's also correct for other people. When let's say we are marketing executives and we're thinking about what is going to drive the decisions of our customers, sometimes we use our own intuition, sometimes we use focus groups, which are, ignorant people's intuitions about what they're doing. But the real issue is that what people believe is driving the behavior is not what's actually driving the behavior. So unless you experiment and try things for real, you're unlikely to be successful.
But doesn't that go against human nature? Are we not wedded to intuition?
Yeah, and it's very tough. It's very tough.
So how would marketers and possibly even governments force that paradigm shift?
Before somebody has the gumption to go ahead and do something that costs billions of rands, I think it's actually criminal not to say, this is what I think will happen, but let me do a little pilot test. And the same things work for marketers, right? I mean, people have beliefs about this advertisement will work. How do you know? People feel it would work. You know what? I'm not willing to waste my money on something that somebody believes. I'm willing to spend some money. Show me that this is actually more effective.
But marketers always default to that so-called safe space, and they will continue to do so, won't they?
And you know what's the worst, I think, curse in marketing? It's focus groups. Why? Because all of a sudden you get these 12 ignorant people in a room and you ask them questions about their beliefs. And when they finish, you get like a little statement that says, Joe from X said this, and you show it on the PowerPoint slide and everybody is convinced. This is not data. I think focus groups should basically be abandoned and people should be forced to have empirical evidence for what they're doing before they're wasting money.
So in this modern age then, how does the consumer decide what to buy? In other words, make a purchase decision?
Lots of things happening in purchase decisions. So part of the issue is, again, we're not under our own control. I'm in a supermarket and they pump the smell of fresh baked goods. I'm a different person. I'm a hungrier person. I'm a person who doesn't think about the future. The reality is that pricing is actually very, very hard. Think about it. Every time you spend a rand, it's about what will you not be able to do in the future. So what do? You come to a website and you see 4 or 5 prices. And we can't think about them in absolute terms. We can't think about, is this book worth this amount of money? So what we do is we compare relative changes. So, oh, there's this vase for this amount and this vase is slightly better and it's not much more expensive. And all of a sudden it's the relative comparison. If I control your decision environment and I can add a choice to it that you don't like, but points in a direction. Because to generic medications. You will save money, I as the company will save money, your employer will save money. And people basically don't respond to that email. Now this company came and basically said, if you look at this, it looks like people hate generic medications. But we said, look, the fact is you can't separate between hating generic medications, which might be true, and not wanting to do anything different. People are going around their own business, and you as the company are sending them a letter say, please do something else. And when they don't, you sell them a colorful brochure and you say, please do something else. You send them a phone number. And you can't separate whether they don't want generic or they don't want to do anything different. So what if, for example, you wrote people a letter and you say, sorry, buddy, doing nothing is no option. You kind of at a T intersection. You have to return this letter, otherwise your medication stops. And you can choose generic or you can choose branded, but doing nothing is not option. What happens? Almost 90% of the people move to generic. When this company gave people free generic medications, nobody wanted it. But when you understand that it's not about generic versus branded, it's about small bumps on the road. For experimentation and to understand those things, companies actually need to start early and they need to create a system to be flexible enough. For testing, imagine we wanted to test advertising. Most companies can't do it. They just assume that whatever they'll do well. But if you start believing that you're not that good, you're not that smart, you don't have that much intuition, and you wanted to do more experimentation, you would actually have to have a much better tracking system and an experimental platform.
So how then can marketers influence the purchasing cycle and perhaps get in earlier on the act?
Let's just think about one example, which is pricing. I'll give you the iPhone example. So think about when iPhone was introduced to the US. It reduced at $600, and then quickly they said, sorry, it's only $400. Was this a smart move or a stupid move? Imagine 2 universes. In universe 1, it started at $600 and go to $400. In universe 2, it starts at $400. And now ask yourself as a consumer, in which of those universes would you appreciate the iPhone for $400 more? Very hard to figure out. Is this the $20 range, $100 range, $1,000? How valuable is this? You don't know. So what do we do when we don't know? We compare it to other things. To what? In the iPhone case, you had nothing to compare it to. But in the universe,
Ariely, in conclusion, then a final question to you. As people start to talk about a second global recession, what then is the big takeout for marketers?
Marketers need to understand the complete set of motivations of consumers. I think marketers sadly have been focusing on a very small subsets of motivation. And these motivations have been effective for a while, but the real beauty of human nature is the fact that we have this diverse and really amazing set of things that drive us. And if we want to get people to do whatever behavior we want, we need to tap more and more of those. So think about things like pride, and a sense of competition, and a sense of accomplishment. I think what we need to do is we need to take this complete set of human motivation and roll it in what we want. It's not just about prices, and it's not just about ego and showing how flashy we are. We really need to start using more and more of these tools.
Dan Ariely, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So I wonder, what do you think drives final purchase decision? You can continue the debate. It's an interesting one on our Facebook page on this address. We'll also put a YouTube link to this video there, so feel free to share it as well. Coming up on the program, how the world's media is expected to perform in 2012.